Hello, in today's podcast, I'd like to read Mortgage Fraud Through the Eyes of a DA's Investigator by John Kleindenist. He's the investigator of the Harris County DA's office. How the Harris County DA's office investigates cases of mortgage fraud. By now, most of us have heard about mortgage fraud as it sweeps across the great state of Texas and our nation. Most investigators dread the thought of dealing with the mountains of paper evidence that mortgage fraud case involves. But as Texas police officers, we do our best to investigate mortgage fraud so that those involved will be held accountable for their crimes. Methodically examining the paper transactions for false information and distilling the results into a case that can be presented and properly handled by a jury is the key. What is credit for sale mortgage fraud? Generally, it is the use of any false, misleading information or documentation to provide a loan to purchase real estate. For the most part, people commit mortgage fraud to obtain a large sum of money in a very short time. However, a small number of people can get caught in pursuing the American dream of making money, and they get sucked into what they thought was the opportunity of a lifetime, which is really fraud. Our office receives telephone calls alerting us to possible cases of mortgage fraud weekly, and these calls come mostly from the Texas Department of Savings and Mortgage Lending and from straw buyers, people have been talked into helping a fraud scheme but are left holding the bag more often, on them later. Our goal is to investigate the case that involves a large number of properties that are flipped by so-called investor. We must stop the large volume of flips to bring it under control in the shortest time possible. Our office investigates 35 to 45 large cases a year. Lately, that number has increased. Participants in mortgage fraud are typically the investor, real estate agent, mortgage broker, appraiser, title company, and, in my case, the county clerk's office. Here's a general outline of how a mortgage fraud takes place. Anatomy of mortgage fraud. An investor locates a target property and purchases it at or near market value, say $250,000. The investor obtains a false, vastly inflated appraisal of the property for, say, $500,000 from a crooked appraiser in cahoots with the investor. A straw buyer is recruited with promises of no financial responsibility for the deal, the property, and payment of an upcoming lump sum payment, say $10,000. The person is usually a bystander who's unaware of the fraudulent scheme, but probably should know better because of the promise of quick money. Closing occurs with the straw buyer purchasing the home of the falsely inflated price. The closing documents generally contain a variety of false statements. The straw buyer may lie about his income and expenses, his marital status, and his intent to occupy the house as his primary residence. The lender funds the purchase to the investor and issues the loan to the straw buyer. The investor, as the seller, receives proceeds of the transaction to $500,000 with a net profit of $250,000. The investor may may or may not pay the promised amount to the straw buyer. The investor drops out of sight after a few months of making the mortgage payments or trying to lease the house to a renter. The lender seeks payment from the straw buyer when the monthly mortgage payments become delinquent, but the buyer can't afford the payments to sell the house because its value is vastly inflated. Foreclosure sale of the property at rock bottom price. Who's affected by mortgage fraud? Everyone. Foreclosures lead to instability in America's financial markets as mortgage-backed securities fail to perform. The inflated sales prices increase the property taxes we pay for our own homes. Your county appraisal district typically uses the sales price of real estate in your neighborhood to determine your home's appraisal value. If you live in a neighborhood where mortgage fraud is occurring or has happened in the past, and the property value is inflated, your property value in turn will rise, and you will pay higher property taxes based on the falsely inflated value. As the mortgage fraud scheme unravels, lenders are left holding a large number of inflated home loans, and suddenly no one is making the payments. The lenders will try to get rid of the houses and are willing to sell them at a price below going market rate. One direct result of lenders taking large losses in their investments are fluctuations of returns for entities such as our retirement accounts, which are invested in the mortgage industries. And finally, a legitimate homeowner in a neighborhood where houses are purchased through fraudulent transactions and then sold at severely reduced prices will have to sell at a price lowered to compete with those foreclosures and fire sales, possibly at less than the honest buyer originally paid. These are just a few of the ways mortgage fraud affects all of us. Obviously, an investor who buys a $250,000 home from a legitimate seller and sells the same home in a matter of days for $500,000 is interested in making a large sum of money in a short time. The straw buyer is typically a hard-working person who believes that he is being presented with his big break. The sales pitch from the investor to the straw buyer goes something like the following. My investment company has been buying a lot of houses that are for sale below the market value. Right now we are asset rich but money poor from buying all these houses. Do you have good credit? If you do, I'm willing to help you buy one of these below market homes at the true market value, which we will have appraised. I know all the people at the real estate office, the appraiser, the mortgage broker, the title company, and the insurance company. I will make sure that everything is handled, including the down payment and closing costs. I will be with you throughout the whole process. After you buy a house, I will give you your equity up front. I will make the monthly payments, pay all the taxes, take care of the property maintenance, rent the property out, and will hold on to the property until the market value increases. Then we'll sell it. I'll pay you the original price you paid, plus the equity you received up front with any legal fees I had to pay. The straw buyer, swayed by the possibility of making a lot of money for nothing, ignores the warning that it looks too good, it's probably not real, and agrees to the deal. I've seen educated and experienced people, including law enforcement officer, fall into the trap. The home is purchased at a price that is vastly inflated to a crooked appraiser helps here. The straw buyer upfront costs are handled by the investor. The mortgage company funds the new loan to the buyer and appears to be well, and all appears to be well. However, the investor eventually doesn't make the monthly payments, skips out on property taxes and maintenance, and the property is never rented out. The mortgage company looks to the straw buyer left holding the bag, and the home ends up in foreclosure due to non-payment. Guess whose credit is trashed? Mortgage fraud of this type requires two separate real estate transactions: the legitimate or good sale and the mortgage fraud flip sale. Contact all the following people to obtain their records for the property you're investigating. These records are full of valuable information. Here are the common property transaction documents and mortgage fraud industry acronyms. Settlement statement, HUD-1. Uniform Residential Loan Application, 10-03. Verification of Employment, VOE. Verification of Rent, VOR. Verification of Deposit, VOD. Occupancy Affidavit. Marital Status Affidavit. Title Policy. Residential Sales Contract. Assignment of Rights and Notifications, and Special Warranty Deed. Examples of all these documents are on www.tdcaa.com. Just search for mortgage fraud. As you examine the documents listed above, look for the following indicators that point to potential mortgage fraud. Fax cover sheets. Are the company names different from the same address and telephone numbers? Is it highly suspicious to have entities such as a property management company, an employee, an investment company, home remodeling company, or a mortgage company using all the same style of fax cover sheet, telephone number, and fax number? Fax headings are on documents. Look for the fax headings for the same company where the date and times do not fit the purchase time period. These are caused by cutting and pasting efforts to create documents. Signatures. Do they appear to be signed by the same individual? I have found signatures for the seller and buyer that were clearly generated by the same person on almost every document for one transaction. Correction fluid, liquid paper, or whiteout. Look for documents on mortgage broker and title company files that have been changed by using correction fluid, photocopied, then marked original. Cut and pasted items. I have found title policies, bank statements, and financial statements that were cut and pasted on or scanned, then altered by computer. HUD-1. Examine this document for all dates and fees paid, POC, paid outside of closing. Beware, because fraudulent transactions often list a lot of POC costs that are not legitimate, and what fees the seller and the buyer paid is the earnest money recorded in this document. Did the buyer have to pay any money at closing? Did the investor attend the closing? Did the seller sign before or after the buyer? Who selected the title company? Item number 210, for example, in mortgage fraud cases, typically shows a zero amount, which is non-contingent in the earnest money listed in the sales contract. This payment with the sales contract is often done with a bogus check. Also watch for a HUD-1 with no cost due to the seller. This will happen when the seller is taking credits for items such as taxes that should be paid at closing but are not. Compare all documents. Is the information on all the documents, in other words, the 10-03 from the broker or title company compared to the -03 from the lender. This is where to look for any changes made to the documents by comparing them to the documents from other sources. VOE. Is the information and income correct? Call the phone number of the VOE to verify information such as employment date, salary, and whether the person who signed on behalf of the employer really exists. VOR. Is the information and monthly rental fees correct? Call the phone number on the VOR to verify the amount provided, such as rental dates, rental amount, and whether the person who signed on behalf of the company exists. VOD. Compare the bank records. Does the deposit and or bank account balance match? Call the phone number of the VOD to verify the information provided, such as account number, account holder, and whether the person who signed on behalf of the bank exists. Occupancy affidavit. Which box is marked secondary or investment property? Typically, the straw buyer marks the property primary residence, but never intends to move into the property. Marital affidavit. Is the buyer married but shows himself to be single, so his wife will not sign the closing documents? In my experience, straw buyers frequently indicate they are single and never inform their spouse about their purchase. Title policy, Schedule A. See how the property is conveyed from the seller to the buyer. Investor as trustee, assignee for Mr. Seller, which is typically done when the investor actually has not taken title of the property yet. In many mortgage fraud cases, the title policy has been altered on a Schedule A after it was issued either by correction fluid or cut and paste. Sales contract. Does it show earnest money being deposited with the listing agent? If so, check for a recent receipt and a copy of the check. Did the agent discount their commission? Frequently, the sales contract will show earnest money paid by the buyer, but was never actually paid or was done with a counterfeit check. The buyer's agent gave a 2% rebate to the buyer after closing, and the agent was then paid by the seller. Assignment of rights and notification. Has this document been filed with the county clerk's office? And if so, when? In fraud cases, an assignment of right and notification is typically used but never filed at the county clerk's office. Special warranty deed. If a home is sold by the lender due to foreclosure, the lender typically issues a special warranty deed. Why was this document used rather than general warranty deed? Was the deed recorded with the county clerk? Whose name is on the deed? In a small number of mortgage fraud cases, the seller never conveys the property to the buyer. On a legitimate transaction, a general warranty deed is issued to the buyer. Sampling of fraudulent documents such as these are described and are available on the TDAA website at www.tdcaa.com. Search for mortgage fraud. It's important to remember that the people involved in the mortgage fraud have access to computers. My investigations have uncovered bogus bank statements, W-2 and 1099, tax returns, rental contracts, VOE and VORs and VODs that were produced via computer. These involve mortgage fraud. Will do whatever it takes to get the loan funded. You've unearthed fraud, but now what? What happens after you've gathered the above documents, examined them, and discovered that mortgage fraud has occurred? that amount of paperwork is not the end of the job. The next step is to prepare flowcharts and spreadsheets to condense the volume of documents and demonstrate where the fraud occurred, and if you are lucky enough to have a financial analyst in your office, this is part of his job. Finally, it's time to present your investigation to your district attorney, who will decide what offense and participants should be charged. Consider the following violations of the Texas Penal Code. 15-32, false statements to obtain property or credit. 34-02, money laundering. 71-02, engaging in organized criminal activity. Don't forget the Code of Criminal Procedure, Chapter 59, forfeiture of contraband, which is an effective way to stop the criminal enterprise when you locate the bank accounts of those involved in mortgage fraud or any other criminal activity. You should file a court order to seize them as they hold the profits from the criminal enterprise and ultimately be awarded to your office for use in future investigations. The following departments and our agencies have assisted with expert opinion and witnesses. The Texas Department of Mortgage of Savings and Mortgage Lending, okay? The Texas Real Estate Commission, Texas Appraiser, Licensing and Certification Board. The lender used the following to obtain information and or certified documents as evidence: Comptroller of Public Accounts, corporate search and certification of franchise tax account status, Secretary of State, the district clerk's office, civil lawsuits naming your targets, the county clerk's office. They're the real criminals in this case. Real property records for all suspected properties and assumed names for all your targets. It's easy to look at mortgage fraud cases and think that they're just too overwhelming to handle. Begin at the beginning and then be methodical in your examination. Try to prove that it's a legitimate transaction, and you will begin to see the discrepancies. Do your best, owe it to your profession, our district attorney and the prosecutors, and present our cases in court, but most of all to the citizens of the great state of Texas. Editor's note. In the 8th regular session, the Texas legislature passed HB 716 to combat mortgage fraud. Among its many changes, the bill increases the statute of limitations on money laundering and false statement to obtain credit from 3 years to 7 years. So that's a little bit of how that works, okay? And entities to contact: the legitimate sale, original seller, the mortgage flip sale, etc. So, anyway, The lender, usually this file will contain most of the records listed below. Compare these documents with others you obtain from other sources. The title company, the real estate agents, the mortgage broker, the title insurance company, a copy of the title insurance to the property, appraisal from the appraiser or lender's file. It will show the inflated property value, look at the comparable appraisers from the same neighborhood, construction, and house size. The county appraisal district. These records document property values through the years, prior ownership, compare the values of the fraudulent appraisal, and you compare the values of surrounding properties. The county clerk. Pull each record, lien, assignment, or any other document filed in this office for the property. The county clerk's office filed fraudulent fax documents, and I don't have a whole lot of them that were filed. All bank accounts belonging to the person involved in mortgage fraud. Follow the money trail, and you'll find any others who are involved. So that's it for that. Thank you for listening to my podcast, and have a good day.